Quest aren't doing their job when you lose yours. So you share your stories, and Lars will hold them accountable. This is the Forgotten Jobless.
I want to point something out before I introduce you to our latest Forgotten Jobless candidate, and that's Patty LaRue. Even the daily dead fish wrapper, which is usually forgiving of the Democrat and liberal politicians who run the region, here's the way they describe the current situation. This isn't 2 months ago when the huge surge of unemployment cases first hit the unemployment offices of Oregon and Washington and Idaho. This is today. This is 2.5 months later, 2 months later at least. The employment department's phones are hopelessly jammed. Most calls get only busy signals. The average hold time for those who do get through spiked at more than 3.5 hours last week. That's the average. Understand that if somebody got through in 2, somebody else got held for 5, according to employment department data. Some callers spend twice as long as that, 7 hours on hold. Among those who make it that far, so if you spend an average of 3.5 or as much as 7 hours on hold, the ones who actually get through, 2/3 of them are cut off without ever receiving a response. That's the situation we're in months into this emergency, which apparently state government is incapable of dealing with, which is why I've always advocated for this department to be privatized to the maximum extent. Now, on that note, let me introduce you to a young lady who is one of the Forgotten Jobless, Patty LaRue. Ms. LaRue, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Actually, my husband was the victim of being laid off because of COVID-19. He works for the Redmond School District.
But you're speaking out on his behalf. What's happened after he sought unemployment?
Well, the typical, we're processing your claim, and then it started weekly we have run into a problem with your claim. We are investigating. So we held on. We were patient. And then 2 weeks ago, he was required to send in documentation to prove that he was still in the country, that they suspected that he had been away from the area for 3 days or more. So my husband gathered together about 15 pages of documentation and went to our local unemployment office, which is not open except for food stamps. But the woman allowed him to use her fax. He faxed everything over, received a receipt showing that they had received the documentation. So if you fast forward to just this past Friday, he got a letter saying that he was denied his unemployment because they were accusing him of being in Europe for a month.
What?
They even gave the dates.
April 5th, 2020 to May 10th, 2020. So your husband managed to travel to Europe without you even knowing about it?
Yeah, and on top of that, he managed to do it without a passport.
Because you said he's never had a passport, and he hasn't been out of the country in the 30 years you've known him. Exactly.
I mean, he was in the military, he didn't need one. And then when he, as a civilian, he never got to get one.
So what do you suppose led them to believe that your husband had been out of the country for a month and 5 days?
Well, they blamed it partially on themselves and also on him. You see, when he was applying for, when he was doing his weekly benefits, they were switching servers. Okay, they've got an antiquated system.
No kidding.
Like from the 90s or even earlier. And they said, we have switched to a temporary server. Please change browsers. So he went and did so, and it wouldn't accept that particular browser because it said that it was an unsecured browser. So he went to a browser that had a VPN, which then it allowed him to process his claims. So they're blaming that on that, but the gentleman that we ended up talking to did say the person that denied the claim did not have authority.
So they denied the claim, but they didn't even have the authority to deny a claim.
Exactly. Now, the only reason why we were able to talk to this gentleman was I'm the kind of person, I'm not afraid of big government. I'm very outspoken. And I decided to, on Sunday, this past Sunday, I went to the Department of Justice, and I went to the list of everybody that works under the Attorney General, and I sent an email to each and every single one of them. 2 hours later, I did receive an email back from one of the people that works for the Attorney General and said that he would send this on to someone who handles these kind of situations. So yesterday, lo and behold, a couple hours after the employment office had opened, we received a phone call from a special department that nobody knows about that handles these special cases.
Special cases where they believed you were out of the country, but you really weren't. Do you, at this point, have any indication of when the checks are on the way?
Okay, well, the gentleman said he would get back to us, and he wanted to talk to me, too, because the Department of Justice had called them.
Yeah,
so he
because
wanted to talk to the person.
this scofflaw who's been spending his time in Europe is trying to get Oregon unemployment. It sounds like, Patty, you are stuck in one of those government loops. That's Patty LaRue, the latest example of our forgotten jobless, and there are tens of thousands of them. Send your emails to talk@larslarson.com.